his cognitive ability, which was also tested at one point down in Toronto, is pretty much on par with that of a 5 to 6 year old. His understanding is right there. There's never really been an issue with that, but it's the communication and the other physical items that have been the issue when it comes to school and that sort of thing.
So in a real layman's term, he can absorb the information, he has trouble with the output.
Yeah, yeah. Which caused a lot of frustration for everyone involved. I mean, schools, the therapists, the teachers, the parents, because you could tell he understood everything, but couldn't tell you what he wanted. So just a lot of frustration when it came to even trying to figure out how to help him. And I think it was that level for the therapists as well for a long time. And the teachers. I mean, I know the teachers are great and you don't get into special needs education, and at least I hope you don't, unless you want to help. And I haven't so far met anybody that hasn't been looking out for his best interests. Like I mentioned earlier, we were talking about the IPRC and the people who are involved, and obviously there are people there who represent the school system who have a bottom line, who may or may not, I don't even know the word, like they just have other items on their agenda that they have to watch out for as well. So it can't always be just about the needs of the child, unfortunately, which is the impression that I got at my last meeting, only because something that's coming up for Liam is he has to have another surgery this year, which on his foot, which means that he'll be in casts in a wheelchair for 3 months, which basically means that, you know, everything that they're working on with toileting, everything that they're working on with trunk strength, everything that they're working on physically kind of goes out the window again for 3 months, because he's not allowed to put any pressure at all on his foot. So in that instance, he's going to need one-on-one. There's no way he can go to the bathroom. He doesn't have the physical coordination to be able to push the wheelchair himself. And he can't, and I'm not going to buy an electronic one. You know, I rented one last time, and I'll probably end up doing that again. And so he's going to need that one-on-one support, which I haven't been told is a guarantee. So it's a little frustrating because I know that that's coming up and I have no idea what's going to happen when the time comes. So when you have a situation like this and you know things are coming up as a parent, you want to make sure that all your bases are covered before it happens. And unfortunately, when you're not given a, oh yeah, don't worry, let us know when it's going to happen and we'll make sure that the people are in place beforehand, you can kind of tend to drive yourself a little bit crazy worrying about it and wondering if it's going to be possible for them to bring somebody into the school system at a later date. I've always been told by the people that if you can get it at the beginning of the year, it's much easier to take them away than it is to get them in later in the year.
Oh, budget.
Yeah. So I'm a little nervous because I know that this is coming, and I know it's probably going to be this fall, over possibly into the winter, which means transportation issues because he's going to be in a wheelchair, which means, you know, getting into the school, getting him out of his, you know, ski pants or out of his whatever. Like it means a whole lot more issues because he can't undress himself. He can unzip his coat, but he has a lot of trouble trying to get it off himself. And same with, you know, even for toileting and that sort of thing, he needs a lot of assistance. He's not potty trained, and so there's that issue as well.
I guess the interesting thing when you're into the school system, when you get into JK and beyond, the procedure for dealing with a child with special needs is the same for your son as it is for a child who maybe has behavior issues, or a child who has some other kind of learning disability that's in the communication field, where they're basically delayed in their cognitive development. The process is the same, where you have to have this identification, placement, and review committee, this IPRC committee, have a meeting with you and with everybody else who's involved in dealing with your son. And they have to, first of all, agree that your son is exceptional. And I think in your case there would be no question, because there are multiple exceptionalities that they can identify.
Yeah.
So the fact that he's identified means that he has to have an IEP, or an individualized education plan, which includes all of these things that you're talking about. So now you've got a legal obligation on the part of the board to provide for the needs of your son according to what those needs are going to be. And that takes into account the fact that he's got an operation coming up, and there's going to be this, and there's going to be that, and all these things have to be put in place. I think what makes it difficult from a school board perspective is that the statistics are showing that about 10% of the students in the system today have an identification. They are identified in some way as exceptional students.
Yeah.
And so they all have to have an IEP, an individual education plan. That plan, you've seen the IEP. It's not a short document.
No, it's not.
It's very lengthy, it's very complex, it covers everything. And it becomes a plan now that is a legal requirement for the school board to put in place. But there's the stipulation that the board is obligated to provide the services or buy the services unless it will produce undue hardship and unless the services aren't available.
Right.
And so you've got a real dilemma here, in that you know there's going to be a need for certain devices to assist your son, and probably more human resources to assist your son at this particular point in time during the course of the year. That has to be part of the plan, and yet there could be a financial consideration that the board has to say, we would like to do it, we just can't do it because we don't have the funding to provide. And I think that's where, when you get into a lot of parents like yourself, you run into a roadblock of how much can you push, what are your rights, what are your responsibilities, how much should you be doing on your own. You're grateful for what you're getting, and you're afraid that if you push, you may lose some of what you've already got. It becomes difficult, because now you've also got the emotional attachment, because this is your son.
Yes. And like I said, I've been very, very lucky. I'm also of a personality that I don't really let things sit if I don't feel good about them, especially when it comes to Liam. I've always been that way. I've always asked a lot of questions. If somebody doesn't give me an answer that I like, I keep asking until somebody can explain it to me. For example, I remember I was really having a hard time understanding why Liam couldn't speak and why he couldn't talk. And I kept trying to get an answer from one of the speech therapists as to what could the possible reasons be that he wasn't speaking. And she said something very simple. It was basically, say A. So I did. And she said, say ah. So I did. And she said, the very fine muscles that you use to say those two different sounds are so finite that if Liam can't squeeze his hand into a fist because you can't control the muscles that well, how do you expect him to control the muscles in his mouth?